So our team was extreme weather and homelessness. So the overall aim of this project was to provide a product to the homeless people of Dublin, which would overall benefit their health or well-being. So you're probably wondering why we chose to focus on homelessness and produce something of social value. Well, inspiration from this project came from our refusal to accept the presence of the homeless street sleepers on the streets of Dublin. And each team member felt strongly the desire to produce something that would aid those sleeping on the streets. So to introduce our team, 2 out of 3 members, Emmett and I, are psychology students in Trinity College Dublin, something which we feel undoubtedly played a role in focusing our project on those in need. In addition, one more team member, Orla, has an in-depth knowledge of the homeless crisis abroad concerning the refugees in Lebanon. And as an industrial design student, Orla's skills we felt were a key factor in our decision to produce a physical and tangible product. Just some background research. Due to the nature of our project, a significant amount of background research was needed into the facilities, supplies and policies that are already currently in place to aid the homeless. So in 2013, it was estimated that there was 5,000 homeless people in Ireland, and on average 90 of these people were sleeping on the streets of Dublin every single night. However, that number is guaranteed to rise because 40% of the 5,000 homeless people were new to homelessness last year, so that number of 90 will increase over the next and coming years. So this enabled us to identify our target market were to the rough sleepers on Dublin streets. We also recognised that there could be a potential link between the increasing damp and cold weather conditions in Ireland and the well-being of the homeless. So we explored some studies that were done and that were carried out, and they claimed that self-report of psychiatric illnesses in the homeless people may be affected by prevailing weather conditions, and that was found to be true in some of the male homeless people in Ireland. So we also investigated the current facilities and services provided by the non-governmental organisations that aid the homeless in Ireland, which will be discussed later.
Okay, so I hope Emma made it clear from our introduction there that basically the aim of this project was to help the homeless people. A lot of other groups took on projects which were of economic value, but we felt the Idea Translation Lab gave us a unique opportunity to focus primarily on something of social value, an opportunity which we wouldn't often get. So it was clear we all wanted to help, but it wasn't immediately evident to us how to help. There was a conflict between what we thought they needed, the homeless people, and what they actually needed. It's all well and good to have goodwill, but we didn't want to waste time investing resources in something which we thought would help, when in fact that wasn't the case at all. So we knew we couldn't predict what it was homeless street sleepers really needed without extensive research. So there were 3 main areas we wanted to research: how we could help their health, mood, and then lastly their shelter and safety. And this brings us on to field research. So Emma is involved in charity work with homeless people, and I went along with Emma on one of the soup runs. We talked to the homeless people. Initially, we wanted to do quantitative analysis on yes/no type answers from the surveys, but when we went on the soup run, we found out a lot more just through talking to people, almost like casual interviews. And the end result of all our field research was we felt we had a much greater understanding of what the real needs of homeless people were, rather than what we, as people who aren't homeless, perceived as their needs. I'll just give it back to Emma now.
So firstly, we wanted to identify some people who already work with homeless people, so we could also talk to them and see what they felt their needs were. So Focus Ireland, as the largest national voluntary association in Ireland, we discovered that they provide over 70 services nationwide to help the homeless, and they're considered the primary NGO in tackling homelessness in Ireland. So therefore, we identified Focus Ireland as a key strategic partner. So we found that Focus Ireland currently distribute 1,000 sleeping bags per year through their street outreach team to the homeless frequently. However, these sleeping bags were noted of poor quality and they're non-disposable. So this gave us an idea of existing alternatives that are already out there. So part of our practical research included contacting liaisons from Focus Ireland. So our meeting with Rowan McNamara, a representative from Focus Ireland, proved extremely beneficial, and he provided us with relevant information and statistics regarding the homeless in Dublin.
This is where the design comes in. So basically, we looked into different aspects of homelessness. We looked at refugees, the Syrian refugees in Syria, and we wanted to do something, initially, we wanted to do something that would work for homeless people here in Ireland, but also for refugees all over the world. We were looking at different projects. There's a sleeping bag jacket that you can just walk along all day long with, and that was a really good idea that we really liked because it was handy and they didn't leave it behind. We focused on, once we talked to Rowan, we kind of focused on like a backpack kind of sleeping bag thing that would just go along with them, that was attached to them, because we found out they were being disposed of a lot. We thought maybe using mushroom as insulation, because they're like nowadays they're using mushroom for home insulation. So we said, why not think of trying for sleeping bags? And we also thought of maybe having a water collection section for the sleeping bag where they could go off and drink rainwater the next day. So a lot of time passed and we were really stuck, and I went to my tutor and I was like, I don't know what to do. And he's like, Orla, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And so because we went to Rowan, we knew the problem we're trying to solve is the fact that they're being disposed of. So we decided to make something recyclable, totally recyclable. The waste is, we reduced the waste of disposed sleeping bags. They'd be able to reuse them for like 2-3 days, and then you could just chuck them all in the recycle bin, and that's grand. So when it came to trying to figure out what to do with the recycled, like just recycled materials, we thought maybe using wax paper as a waterproof section, or maybe doing an origami sleeping bag, or maybe like a pizza box concept where a blanket of paper would just come over. And the thing that we realized is that cardboard is the best thing to have if you're freezing, because cardboard is like a mattress. It will just keep your body heat from going into the cement. So we decided to use shredded paper in little plastic bags, vegetable bags. And the thing about them is they're really squishy, but they're really thermal in a way. If you just stack them up, if you kind of quilted them, they'd stop heat from passing through and going out, or cold air from coming in. So our final concept was this angular burrito, kind of totally recyclable thing. And it's nice because they could just slide in and then close it, and that would be it. They'd have their own little private space. Now, I know what you're saying, that it's a coffin or they're going to die, ventilation, what's going on, what if someone attacks them? But the thing is, if someone fell on them, right? If someone fell on the top, they'd actually be more safer, than if someone actually fell on them without the cardboard. When it came to ventilation, obviously there'd be like holes on the top of the front and the back. And ideally, we'd like to have doors for them where they could open maybe from the back. But it's an idea, and we'd like to try it, and we want to work on it. So the pros of having something like this is that it's safe, it's warm, and it's private. Homeless people don't have privacy, and that's something that they really want. And they're disposable. They would last a few days, because cardboard does last a few days, and it's really cheap to produce. So finances-wise, we looked at a manufacturer here in Donegal, and it would cost €1.45 for a 2x2 sheet. So it would be a good sized like sleeping bag. You could store things, you could do whatever you wanted, and then it would be 0.03 cent for a plastic bag. So I know you're thinking they're tiny, but we could make something work. And then obviously donated paper for the shredded bits in the plastic bags. The donated paper, what we thought would be nice is to get communities together and have them think of, well, how can we help homeless people too, and just make them aware of what's going on. So I think churches and community centres would really be interested in it. So raising awareness. The final thing we really wanted to do was put a logo of Focus Ireland or Dublin Simon or whoever's with us, and we wanted to put it on the side and then have something like just a saying So it could be your brother or your mother, just to make people realize that they're actual human beings, and they're not just scum, or they're not just anything. You know, they're real people, and I think that's the biggest thing that people don't realize here in Ireland. And just conclusion, we're not a fancy business, and we don't want to be a fancy business, and we're just focusing on people. And the best part of this is that we can look forward, we can constantly change, we can constantly produce new things. We can look into mushrooms in cardboard, we could change the way it looks, but they're always going to want our product, because we're always going to have homeless people, because people don't really care in the world. So honestly, I think we're just great. Sorry if that was long.
Could I just ask you, well done, that's really, really good. Do you think there would be a cheap way of coating that cardboard to make it waterproof?
What we were thinking, we could use wax paper. 'Cause, initially, we wanted to use wax paper on top of so like the bread paper, you know, the waxy bread paper. We wanted to use that on top of normal paper and form regular sleeping bags. But we decided to go something, like just do something different in a way. So if anything, we could have like just a bit here on the top. But the fact that you have this, sorry, I don't know how to show it to you. The fact that it's going double, if you have a double seam, then it would be stronger, and the rain wouldn't affect it as much as just a single triangle if it was just stuck in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. When you went out and spoke with the homeless people, did you get a sense of what they would like in terms of a sleeping bag or otherwise?
Yeah. Would you like to do that?
Yeah, when we went out to talk to the homeless people, their main problem was they didn't have very strong opinions on sleeping bags themselves. Once they had a sleeping bag, they were happy. Their main problem was holding on to a sleeping bag, so they'd be, Folks Ireland now distribute very relatively expensive sleeping bags, so they get this relatively expensive sleeping bag, it'll be stolen, lost, or they'd leave it behind. So the problem isn't the quality of the sleeping bags, it's maintaining the supply of sleeping bags. So that's why we're trying to focus on quantity rather than quality in this instance. So ours is cheaper, it's much easier to keep in stock than, say, an expensive sleeping bag. And there is no point producing a more expensive sleeping bag if it's going to be thrown out and lost or stolen.
So you want something you can bring around with your super on that's actually really
Yeah.
And it's flat pack. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Easily transportable.
Okay.
Terry, would you like to see? You can squish it. It's really, honestly, it's really serious. It's really comfortable. You'd be surprised. Like, it's really cushy. It would work if you actually thought of it. It would work. That's the thing. That would work for people who deserve it and need it, and while not spending that much money.
Yeah. I mean, if you can incorporate air into it as well, which would be a good insulator.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.